Welcome to shoe school. Welcome to crack school or shoe school. We're going to be looking at shoes today and what climbing shoe is good in which particular crack. Each shoe has its own job, or else, we just climb in one shoe otherwise. Shoes with rubber, laces, Velcro, whatever it might be, they all have their sort of like different roles, you can say. So starting on the narrow sizes, if we're thinking finger cracks are really hard for the feet. There is no question about it. That is literally what makes finger cracks hard. I always think the first thing to look for on finger cracks and your main priority is little edges, smears, footholds around the edge of the crack. So really, if you do have these type of features to use, then using a boot which suits that type of climbing is going to be the best option. So let's say we're climbing a finger crack and there's lots of different options and you're on edgy rock. So maybe you're on granite, it's got lots of different edges, or you're on limestone, lots of different edges. Maybe you'd go for like a sort of a stiffer, precise edging shoe. Maybe, what have I got in my range here? Stiff and edgy. Something like that. On the other hand, if you're climbing a finger crack and maybe it's slightly slabby, maybe it's like polished granite or even gritstone, and you're having to smear around the edge of the crack, you could just go for a complete contrast and you might go for a smearing shoe. Smearing. So yeah, it's like really picking the shoe for the climb, and with finger cracks, it's definitely looking around the edge of the crack first. Alternatively, with finger cracks, you might actually be jamming your feet in the crack. And I would say for this, you do want a slightly softer shoe. The finger cracks are they're kind of small, so you want to be looking for those pods to fit your feet in, and you want to be able to like get a slightly softer shoe to mold the boot and mold the rubber into those small spaces. That's what I always think. And again, you might also potentially have one foot in the crack and one foot outside the crack, especially if like the crack is leaning or something. You might have, so if we're leaning left to right, we might have our left foot in the crack, we might have our right foot on the face. So potentially you could go soft boot in the crack, edging boot on the face. Obviously you want a left and a right. I don't know if I'm stating the obvious here, but I just picked up two left boots. Moving on to hand crack. No, we're not moving on to hand cracks, we'll move on to thin hand cracks. So thin hand cracks, we're really starting to get to the size where you definitely can get a bit of the toe and a bit of the foot inside the crack. I would say you want to go for a very low profile shoe. That's the key here. So low profile, you want like very, very low on the toe here, because this is the bit you're inserting. You want it low profile on this bit. If we can see like a different shoe to compare it to, this one for example, compared to this one, you can see the difference in profile there, and you can imagine this one trying to get into the crack, it's gonna, not good. Whereas this one going into the crack, straight in, it's gonna be brilliant. So you're looking for that low profile shoe. That's the really important part. I would say you want it soft, but not so soft that when you're twisting it starts to roll out, because when the shoe is soft and you haven't got that much in, if you start to twist, then it can start to roll. So you definitely need a little bit of tension there on those thin hand cracks. So low profile, medium stiffness. Okay, so moving on from thin hand cracks, we're going to be looking at slightly wider, so up to hand size. So I would say the main difference with thin hands and hand cracks is that obviously you're starting to get more of that toe box, the toe of the shoe, into the crack. And this is where a boot with actually toe rubber on the front and top of the toe can be really helpful, because in hand cracks we're going to be getting it, essentially we're going to be getting it up to this part of the foot. So getting rubber contact on this side of the crack as well as this side of the crack is going to be really helpful. Again, you still want a semi-soft shoe, you don't want it too soft, because too soft it can really start to hurt your feet after a while from all the twisting. But again, you don't want it too rigid and too stiff, or else you'll never be able to sort of mold and get your foot inside. So a semi-stiff, nice and flat, low profile, rubber on the toe, great for hand cracks. Also, when you're starting to use the boots in hand cracks, it's quite important to have sort of good tension across the shoe. You're starting to twist your foot a little bit more. You don't want to start rolling the side of your heel off the shoe from so much twisting. So like Velcro straps are quite good because it keeps this area of the boot free where you can get the rubber and there aren't any laces going down. But you can also use laces to keep that tension. But I often think, yes, some Velcro strap shoes for hand cracks, rubber on the top, ideal, bosh. So with fist jamming cracks, we're actually aiming to jam across the width of our foot, so across this area of the foot. So we want this bit to be nice and stiff underneath. I guess we want good width over here, so we're actually filling the crack, and when we push our foot in, we have sort of natural expansion, and it fills the crack automatically. So some nice good width. Also, because in fist cracks we're going to be stood down in the crack, our foot's going to be quite flat like this. We want it to be nice and stiff across the base of the shoe. So actually having a shoe which has the sole of the rubber all the way across the base, rather than, you can see on this shoe, there's a split in the rubber here, and that does actually lose some of that stiffness straight through, like that flat-footed stiffness. This one is going to create more of a platform to stand on and make it a bit stiffer, in that position, just wedged in the crack in that flat-footed position. So yeah, nice and broad across here, flat across the base, and yeah, nice and stiff as well, so you can climb, stand on it. You want to be standing on it like it's a plank of wood, don't you? If you imagine putting a plank of wood into the crack and then standing on that plank of wood, it'd be bomber. It'd be absolutely bomber. I mean, you couldn't fall off. Whereas if you imagine putting, what's soft? Candy floss. Yeah. I mean, if you put candy floss into the crack, then that would be carnage. You wouldn't be able to stand on it. So yeah, plank of wood, not candy floss. For an off-widthing shoe, we're going to be looking something slightly different. We still want that same rigid platform underneath like we had with the fist crack shoe, but potentially we want a little bit more support and protection around the ankle. This is from twisting and camming in kind of weird and wonderful ways. So that support around your ankle will give you like protection of the ligaments and kind of soft tissue around there, but it also gives you protection to abrasion as well. So when you're putting your feet in the crack and quite deep and twisting them, you can often quite get like, rubs across the ankle bone, which is sticking out. So having a shoe which covers this is going to really help. Now, what can I pick for this? None of these are actually high top, so we're going to have to look for something else. Somebody out there? Anybody? Yes, excellent. We have a shoe with a high top. So I wouldn't actually use this shoe for climbing in, but this is a good example of what a climbing shoe with a high top might look like. Shoe, high top. And essentially this is gonna, be around the ankle. And it's just gonna give you that extra support and extra protection. Actually, this shoe does have it on. Another extra little tip is to use flat laces on your off-widthing shoe. So some boots actually have like circular laces, and they're actually a higher profile. And when you're sort of like camming your feet and doing all these weird jamming techniques, it can actually rub the laces a lot easier if they're circular. So replacing them with like flat, flush laces can actually sort of save your laces a little bit, and also like sort of stop that abrasion, stop any rolling, and just makes like a cleaner finish to the boot. So yeah, that's your sort of off-width thing, nice and stiff, high top, protection around the ankle, flat, flush laces. You also, I guess if you move on to roof crack off-width climbing, you're going to be doing a lot of, hang on, how would your foot be? It would be this way. it would be this way. Would it? Yeah, of course it would. It would be this way. Which means you're actually going to be jamming your feet like this sometimes. So sort of tensioning between here and here. What we always call it is like a clown foot. You actually want the shoe to be like this. Imagine a shoe like that. It's going to be really stiff in that direction if it was like that. So when you put it in the crack this way, and you put it like that, it's going to have loads of tension across the bottom of the shoe. I remember one technique that Tom used once. He did this weird threading thing with his laces. He got the laces, he threaded them back down through the lowest eyelets, back round, back up this way, and then cranked the toe of the shoe like this. Tied the knot at the top and set off on the route with a big clown banana foot in that direction. And then when he was hanging by his feet upside down, he could get his toe like this, and there was loads of tension across the bottom of the shoe, and it essentially stopped the shoe totally bananaing in this direction. Because if you can imagine, let's say take this shoe for example, it's really flexible in this direction. So if you're in a roof crack and you've put your shoe in, and it's just bending in this direction, your foot is just going to automatically just want to come out the crack. Whereas if your foot is bending in this direction, there's going to be loads of tension and it's going to want to stay in there. Banana foot. So some general rules. Obviously you can't say this for every crack, but in a general sense, aiming for with a crack shoe is low profile on the toe, toe rubber, tension across the top of the foot here to stop the heel sort of rolling when you're twisting your foot. A nice clean toe and top of the shoe, so not like loads of low Velcro straps, laces all the way down, nice and clean. And a sort of mid to stiff base and sole without the break in the rubber. And the general nose of climbing shoes are the highly downturned knuckles pointing out the end of the shoe, so your feet are like blocked in the end, like a high profile on the toe box. That's your sort of general no, don't go there. It's going to be really painful and you're going to struggle to get your feet in the crack as far as you can, basically. So there we have it. That is a roundup of shoe school, crack school, whatever you want to call it. If that was useful, then like, subscribe, and leave some comments of, what else you would like to hear. Thank you very much. Adios, amigo.